Um, Seagull Centre has got funding from the Waste Minimisation Fund to do a pilot plant for seeing if we can process food waste and other bio-waste using black soldier fly larvae. So I don't know how much you guys know about black soldier fly larvae, but they're very fast at processing food waste, and that's one of the reasons we've looked at them after looking at a few other things. So black soldier flies are not native to New Zealand, but they're naturalised. You may have seen them in your compost bins if you're in a slightly warmer area of New Zealand, especially in the summer, probably not much in the winter. You may see the flies. They're a sort of fairly long, very quiet sort of a fly that just sort of sits around waiting to mate and then dies. So they're not pesky. They don't pester anything because they don't eat when they're flies. They eat when they're larvae. So they don't go and bother people or animals. And they don't live very long as a fly. Um, the larvae can eat a very wide range of organic matter, mostly decaying. They grow really fast, and you can process a batch in as little as 8 days. They are quite good at reducing the smell of biowaste, so anything that's got a bit of a smell, they'll reduce it quite quick. Though they will produce some ammonia towards the end of the process, which can produce a different smell. And they also reduce the pathogens in the biowaste. Their manure is a bit like worm castings, but in our process will be quite a dry product. It contains quite a lot of chitin from the exoskeletons of the soldier fly larvae. And chitin has quite a few benefits for plants. It can cause plants to arm themselves against insect attack. It can also deter other insects. There's a lot of nutrients in the frass, and it can reduce the pathogens in the soil and in plants. So I thought I'd show you a video to show why they're quite good. It doesn't tell you exactly how long it takes, but it's a very quick process of them processing food waste. So let's see if we can get this to play. They're very effective eaters. They kind of form a ball often around food, and they'll just rotate so that they're actually super efficient at getting at all the food. Oh, oh, my screen is shrunk. Okay, let's try it again. Um, they, you can actually use, oops, stop again. Sorry about that. You can use the larvae as an animal feed. There can be around about 50% protein, about 30 to 35% fat. So they can be quite an effective feed for animals, and the animals like them. And so I did some tests very early on when I was doing my masters. I thought I'd have a try, so I just got some out of my compost bin and tested them with my ducks. And so this was the second time they'd ever seen them. And they obviously liked them quite a lot. It took them about 45 seconds to eat the lot the second time. You can also feed them to fish, pigs. In some countries, they even feed them to cows, but I'm not totally convinced that cows should be eating too many of those sorts of things. But and finally, some pigs. You can kind of see that the pigs are quite keen too.
Yeah.
Tasty.
Yep, they seem to like them. They're quite good at cleaning up the biowaste, the larvae, so they can reduce the pathogens in biowaste. They're quite good at Clostridial bacteria, Listeria, Salmonella, E. coli. They'll reduce the amounts. They can be fed, as you've seen, to quite a lot of animals and fish as well. So they have an additional sort of environmental benefit of reducing some of the impacts of things like fish meal, which is hugely impactful. And they also reduce a lot less greenhouse gases than landfill or hot composting. Nope. So we're just at the stage where we've just built our first container. The picture to show up in a minute, but it hasn't yet. I don't know why. Oh, there we go. And it's quite high tech looking. You can see on the pic. Can you see the pictures all right? Yep. You can see the insect rearing trays, which are the trays with the gaps between them. At the moment, we've got one container with everything in, but we will be moving, just having that for breeding. And then we've got 2 other containers that will be our rearing containers, but we're starting with this and then building up slowly. It's got climate control, and the climate control is what will allow us to do this in New Zealand all year round. They're soldier fly larvae, or soldier flies are native to the tropics, and so they need a slightly warmer climate. The cages here are for breeding, so that the flies can fly around in there and mate. If you can see the boxes underneath, those are boxes for pupa. So when you've harvested the larvae, you collect some of them to breed from, and they go in these boxes underneath, and then they stay there probably for 3 to 4 weeks. And they'll fly out, and then they'll hopefully mate, and they'll lay in these little blocks of wood that are stacked, called eggies, and then we'll collect the eggs every day from there. So in the first year, we're going to be on the Seagull Centre site, and then in the next year, we're going to be looking more at industrial food waste. We're starting with commercial food waste. We couldn't get the council collection because it's already been funded. In the next year, we'll be getting more industrial food waste. So we'll have mussel farm, hopefully some more agricultural waste, and we might be processing on 2 sites, because one of the aims that we wanted to do was make it a sort of resilient. So having it container based means we can put containers in different places, so that if the roads get blocked, which is not uncommon in the Coromandel, then they can be processed where they are. And we can also put containers on a site that has a lot of waste, so that the waste can be processed on site. In the last year, we've also been funded to look at processing biosolids. So we'll be based on one of the wastewater treatment plants for the last year. And as we go along, if we get something successfully going, we will commercialize maybe as we go along, the different levels. So one of the reasons we're doing it is because the decay of food waste causes about 15% of global greenhouse gases, and food in landfill wastes nutrients and causes contaminations, which I'm sure you guys know because you're all composters. We're going to be trialing household, commercial and industrial food waste, and we're going to work on making the process commercially viable, but through a social enterprise model. So we don't have to make profit, which means we can do things a little bit differently. We're going to be working with environmental science research. They'll be testing the products, making sure everything's safe. And the University of Canterbury are looking, they've got a few students looking at different things you can do with the soldier fly larvae. So they've got a product development department are mostly looking at things they can do with the soldier fly larvae, which is really quite cool, and the frass. We'll also be looking at other research agencies. So we've got an organisation together of people who are interested in insect farming, and we meet up every couple of months. And then there's also a group formed through the Bioresource Processing Alliance. So we've just got to the stage of meeting together face to face, and we're about to look at forming an industry association for that. The biosolids, although the official figures are 25% of human sewage solids going to landfill, in actual fact, it's 78% because all of Auckland's goes into a quarry and they call it quarry remediation. But filling a quarry up with poo sounds like landfill to me, so I'm going to call it landfill. It's very expensive. It wastes nutrients and it contaminates the landfill. And we're going to work on whether we can safely process the biosolids as an alternative to landfill. And one of the other areas we're trying to encourage people, particularly through things like the rest homes where they have, or the retirement villages where they all have incinerators, is not putting food waste down the incinerator. And the hospital also puts most of their food waste down the incinerators, because that's incredibly expensive to go through the wastewater treatment plants. You get a lot of questions about the flies. So usual question is, are they going to bother me? Are they going to be like those annoying little grass flies that bounce up and down in your legs and annoy you when you're sitting around in the summer? No, they're not. They don't tend to bother things. I occasionally see them at home, but they'll sit on my kitchen window and don't really move. Other people are really worried about maggots. They think maggots are dirty, but the truth is that maggots have adapted to a really dirty environment, and they actually have antiseptic, antibiotic, and anti-inflammatory properties. So they're now feeding them to old dogs because of the anti-inflammatory properties. There will be some smell associated with the process, but the way that we're going to do it is mostly it's contained in the container. When it goes through the outlet, if we find that we do have an issue with smell, which at the end of a process there will be ammonia, so they get some ammonia smell, we're going to have a go at putting it through a biofilter, just a simple one, to see if that will help it. We're at a very busy stage at the moment. We're learning lots. And I thought I'd write down a few insights because everybody tells you the good stuff, and I think you need to know some of the tricky stuff as well. And I'm sure some of you who've done projects know that you always get a few of that. One of the big things is that there's a lot of work in getting funding, and if you're trying to do a quick trial and error, almost might be worth not going through the funding route and seeing if you can self-fund, because you end up having to try and prove that the trial will work before you do the trial. So that can be a lot of hours of work. We've discovered that putting an extra project on an organisation that already exists sort of can uncover the limitations, so this is not a criticism of the parent organisation, it's just we've grown from one person in a shed to 24 staff and a number of sheds. We didn't have any power. So we discovered basically the power wasn't really up for what we needed, and also that the accounting system wasn't ready for the level of complication of doing multiple projects. So that was quite a learning. The innovation stage is going to take longer and cost more than you think, which is kind of where we're at the moment. And although it's off-putting making mistakes, you learn fast and it's really important. So that's a couple of insights I thought you might like. We've been very lucky to get the funding from the Waste Minimisation Fund. Waikato Regional Council has put in money as well. ESR is giving us some in-kind funding. So we're paying some for theirs and they're also giving us in-kind funding. We're on Thames Coromandel Council district land, so they're helping out where they can. And at the moment, the University of Canterbury is supporting us with students working on part of the project.